Honeyland Mike here, and this week I wanted to dive into some helpful tips for making yourself a better shed hunter. And this has to deal with before you even go out and look for sheds. This is the prep work essentially that's actually going to help you find these faster and make your time out in the woods more valuable. Still got to put a ton of time in walking in miles, but I think a lot of things that don't get talked about is like actually the things that I do before you even go out and look for sheds. We'll follow up with another video on like helpful tips on what's going to make you a better shed hunter once you're out in the field, but I think it actually starts before you get out there. And this time of year, it's tough. It's end of January, February time. Here in Minnesota, there's a lot of snow, super cold. It can be quite difficult to find sheds this time of year anyway, especially with a bunch of snow dumping down and the weather changing so much. But a lot of times we get so anxious because we're ready to get out there and go find sheds that we end up shooting ourselves in the foot. So today I want to give some helpful tips that will be great to make your shed season awesome. And these are things you can do in the dead of winter in those terrible weather days, the cold, the snowy time of year where you can prepare for your spring shed season and make it the best year ever. And all you need is what you see in front of me here. To find these bad boys, your truck keys, your car keys, whatever, and your computer. So the basic things I want to cover is narrowing down where you want to look for sheds by using aerial maps and looking at the topography and narrowing down where you should even go walk and look in the first place. The other basic thing is actually getting eyes on it, maybe not actually walking where you think the sheds are going to be, but looking to see if and driving around and doing the visual scouting you should, because if there's not deer there now in the January, February, March, you're not going to find sheds there. So you need to make sure you are kind of checking those places off your list on where deer are and where deer aren't, because if the deer aren't there, you're just not going to find them, and then you can just simply save yourself a lot of time. And I've done this a lot. Like March comes around, you're so jacked up, snow is starting to melt. A lot of times I'm seeing like heavy matted down trails that were actually used in the fall and not the winter. And so I'm thinking that they were there all winter, but they might not have actually been. So this is a great time of year to drive around and make sure you see or don't see deer. So let's dive into a little bit more in depth on the east scouting side. Actually, one more tip is using trail cameras. This also might require you to get out there and look at your trail cameras, or if you have self cameras, you can just get them on the pictures on your phone. But this is good to have it in areas where there are deer or traveling through, and you can see when they're actually dropping. So you can see if the buck has already dropped a side or dropped both sides. That way you can get a good indication of when and where those deer are dropping. But here in Minnesota with the heavy winters, deer are finding the top food and cover sources. So a lot of deer end up congregating in close-knit areas. So they're not going to be in every woodlot out there. They're only in certain areas, certain times of the year. So let's dive into it. All right, e-scouting for shed hunting. This is kind of the biggest thing I focus in on this time of year. This is where you can spend the time in the comfort of your home, narrowing down the locations that you think the deer are going to hold up. And what you can see in here, there's a bunch of open farm fields in the bottoms, up on top. There's a water source coming through here, and then you have this strip of woods. So now you've got this like essentially limiting resource for the area that shows a lot of open farm country. So when you see these secluded wood plots, that's places that I'm looking for to narrow in on, zero in on, because that's giving them plenty of cover during the harsh winter months. Now, as I'm looking down into these woodlot areas or finding these pockets of cover that I think they're going to hang up in, I'm really focusing in on southerly facing slopes. Slopes, and then where are places that's going to be comfortable for them to bed. So like in really steep sections, they probably won't bed in there. But what they'll do is they'll find these little shelves on these south-facing slopes and bed. So where these lines start to separate out will be great locations, or up on this nice flat section of this ridge, kind of on this southern side. That would also be a really good location to say, all right, I'm gonna actually make sure when I'm walking through here, I'm gonna cut in through these little shelves in the southern slope. That's where they're going to be spending a lot of their time, is in those sunny spots, out of the wind, and in plenty of cover, and comfortable for them to bed. And the other factor here is that this is close to farm fields, so they can easily come back up in here or go to the other side, find food, and then come back into these south-facing slopes really easy and get out of the weather, chew their cud, and digest their food. So that's one of my bigger things that I narrow down in terms of like where I'm gonna go shed hunt in the spring. Now to dive into the visual scouting part of it, the importance of like knowing that there's deer where you want to look, or this can also kind of be done in sequence with e-scouting. It's like when you find where their deer are, then you can go back to your computer, find out where they might be bedding up in that area, or how they might be using that location, and where those food sources are. And so you can't just do one, then the other, then go look. Kind of the scouting from the truck and the scouting from your computer kind of work together to help you narrow down where you're going to look in the spring and where those deer are without pressuring those deer in January, February, in the harsh conditions, and just letting them be. And this time of year, this end of January right now, and we still see deer holding antlers. So you don't sometimes balance the risk of going in and pushing deer off the areas you want to find sheds later, but it just has to match with what your goals are and what you want to do. But for me, this is a great time of year to like narrow down where you're going to scout, and that is a big part. Finding the deer. The deer aren't there, you're not going to find them. And it's actually kind of surprising on where you actually see and don't see, because so many spots I thought this would be awesome. Shed hunting areas, looks like tons of sign tracks, and it's a false positive. You think that's signs from the winter, and it was actually the fall. So keep those things in mind. Get in the truck, get on your computer, narrow down where you're gonna go shed hunting before you go out there. That's how I found this Mac Daddy. This was an early February find, but what I did is I actually found the spot I wanted to go take a look at, because on the maps it had this nice flat shelf on the southerly face of a woodlot, and it was a nice large woodlot in the area, covered, just surrounded by wide open farm fields. So I knew that was probably going to be a good location to concentrate deer. And then that southerly slope in the tree cover with easy bedding locations, with a slow kind of bench area, I knew that's where I should definitely focus my area. And as soon as I got there, tons of deer sign, trails everywhere, and at that point it was just a matter of time, and sure enough, I found one. Now, the last thing to keep in mind for this time of year is trail cameras. This can be a super helpful tool to understand if the area where your trail cameras are, if in fact bucks are hanging in that area, and when they're dropping, seeing if bucks only have one side left, or being able to see the pedicles when the antlers drop. Excellent intel to narrow down where you're going to go look and when you're going to go look, especially if you're trying to find them before spring thaw. Here in Minnesota, tons of snow. They're already hitting food sources, or there's heavy trails, and you see that a buck has lost its antlers in the last day, and you know a snowstorm is coming in 3 days. Maybe your chance to go find it before the weather changes again. So, quick summary. To find more of these and make your spring shed season more productive, use the tools that you have and the time that you have now in the cold months to narrow down where you're going to go look and improve your odds. Use your computer, aerial maps, onX, hunt, find where they're going to be bedded up, get in the truck, drive some miles, find out where the deer actually are, find where the trails are using, where they're crossing roads, and if you need to or want to add to your repertoire, get some trail cameras out there. All right. Mike Kangas, Hunting Land Mike. If you like this kind of stuff and any info regarding real estate, hunting land, hunting strategy, land development improvements, making your hunting experience and recreational experience with your family better, give me a like, follow, doing more videos, everything land. Land is my life. This is what I do and talk about and live and sell. Stay tuned for more.